I have planted a lot of seeds in my garden over the years, and there are just some seeds that no matter what, just always give me a hard time. So I'm gonna go over those seeds and I'm gonna tell you how I get them to germinate and what my thought process is behind that. But first, we gotta do something. It's a big day, it's graduation day. I got my first set of non-Friskers pruners and we're gonna go cut something for the first time right now. All right, it's time to get rid of some of these pepple plants right here. So yeah, these are Corona 1-inch pruners. So they'll basically trim anything up to 1 inch, supposedly. Don't know anything about them, but I know I wanted to try something different. So, ooh, just like butter, son. Here to tell you, these things cut so nice. I just cut my whole garden down. Who even cares? No, I'm just joking. But no, let's talk about these seeds that every year I plant a bunch of seeds, and I really like to direct sow in my garden. It's really one of my passions. It's just a lot easier and things get up and going quicker, generally speaking, but there are some downsides to it. And every once in a while you just get a seed, it's like, man, no matter what I do, I cannot get it to germinate. So I have to go back to the drawing board and work on it. And the first one, and I ever since I started growing down here in zone 8A in North Carolina, the first one I've had issues with is spinach. When I grew them up north, I didn't have that issue, but down here I'm having a hard time. Hold on, let me put my pruners up real quick. My goal is not to lose these all the time like my other ones. Got all of our spinach here in the greenhouse, which actually I did get really good germination with, believe it or not, and things are growing. It's time for feeding. And the fact that I got them to grow in here is just absolutely shocking to me. I mean, this is gonna be a little bit of yo-yo situation in this video, so just deal with me. But I can tell you that I planted some spinach out here and we're gonna go look at it, and I just had really, really slow to no germination, and things just seem to be stalled. So since we're here, this is the bed, and if you get down low, you can see like we are getting some to come up periodically, but just not a lot. And it's been perplexing to say the least. I probably have, out of the 3 rows I planted, it looks like probably 10 plants. Now I put a lot more than 10 seeds in there, I can go ahead and tell you that. But the issue is, it really comes down to temperature. When you plant spinach, it really, really likes cooler temperatures, which is why it's so shocking that in the greenhouse here, they all basically germinated, but out here it didn't. And the way I did that is I timed it out. So I knew we were getting a cool spell, and I took advantage of that cool spell and really got in there and just seeded it as soon as we had, let's say, about roughly a week where it was getting down to the upper 40s at night, and it even stayed in the 60s, and now it's back up in the mid 70s and even 50s at night. So, and in the greenhouse right now, it'd just be too hot to get that germination going. And since it likes to be cool like that, what I did is during the daytime, I would go out there and I would just spray the garden and keep it cool, or keep the greenhouse cool, keep that soil cooler, and we got germination. Typically, most seeds germinate, and if you look at packages, you'll be able to, come up with this. Most seeds germinate with 7 to 10 days. Some of them take longer, which we will get into, but the spinach is different. So, or it's not different by that, but it's the temperature. It's really sensitive to it. And the seeds out in the wild garden over here, it may very well take, if the seeds could be sitting in the ground dormant right now, and then they'll start to pop as it gets cooler, and it may not. But we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna reseed it at some point in the very near future and just give it another shot. It's difficult to deal with because you want to get it to grow, but you've got to time out the temperature is just right. So the ideal temperature for the spinach, you can start spinach anywhere from 40 degrees to about 65 degrees. And that's your soil temperature. So if you want to know what your soil temperature is, I don't use a soil thermometer. Whatever your temperature is during the day is typically going to be around where it is going to be a little bit cooler because it gets cooler at night. But typically it will be a little bit, cooler. It'll be around, so right now it's 75 degrees during the day. My soil temperature is probably around 70 degrees, which means we are getting into better time for spinach to germinate. If you guys have a plant or a seed in particular that you struggle with in the cool season, so fall or spring, let us know in the comments below. And even if you found a way to combat that and be successful with it, let us know your tricks too, because we're a community, we got to help each other. Now another one may not be to anybody's surprise, but that will be onions. I've got 3 trays of onions. I've got this one that I've done solely outside, nowhere else. And then I've got 2 trays in the greenhouse. So let's go into the greenhouse and check those out. By the way, guys, if you see back behind us all this stuff in the yard, I had a rat get in the shed last week and I had to get rid of him. And then once we got rid of them, we wanted to stop the problem from happening. So any container I had that a rat could get in, we pulled out. And I've got to get new tops for totes, so we're just leaving them out so we don't get anything else in there. It wasn't fun, but that's what all that is. Hopefully we'll get it taken care of soon. Now these onions here tell the story. So we have older tray, and both of these were started inside. No, this one was started outside, I'm sorry. So this one was started out in the shade, then brought inside, and this one was started in here only. Now again, the temperatures had gotten cool, so we weren't getting as much germination, so I brought them in. Now, we have a Facebook group, Backyard Gardens Podcast. It's called the Backyard Gardens Community Garden page, I believe is what it's called. Anyway, somebody had just posted in there that like, hey, I direct sowed my onion seeds and nothing came up. And that is a problem that I have. And a lot of people were saying in that group the same thing. I don't know why that is, but I have always had better luck starting them in trays. And I mean, I'm talking about really good luck. You can see like this tray is totally full, just completely full. And I don't know what it is. I think it's because we can keep them moist, because they do take a little bit longer. I think these took right around 14 days to come up, and these took about, because they were warmer, they took less time. I don't remember, maybe 10 days, something like that, to start coming up. But once they start to come up, they do fine, but you've got to keep them moist the whole time, and that's really hard to do, especially when you're trying to start stuff outside. So I'm also going to go ahead and just trim the tops of them. And the only reason why I'm doing this is because it keeps them more orderly as they grow, because they're going to sit in these trays for a while. So I'm just giving them a little trimmy trim. We'll just trim them down, and then they'll be able to grow back uniform. That's basically just to tame them, because they're going to be in here so long. But another reason why onions can be hard to germinate, simply because the seed doesn't, after a year, it loses its fertility rate. Is that the right word? We're going to go with that word. And it won't be able to germinate. It's, once you hit that year mark for when the seed was saved, it dramatically drops off. Where you have something like, well, we'll just go with our list, like spinach. Like you can have spinach for a couple years and still get great germination. But for the most part, it does become an issue. Over time, all seeds will degrade. That's a better word. But onions are particularly bad for this, as are carrots. And carrots is another one of them. So dovetailing directly into it, carrots can be difficult to grow, and that's really for one simple reason. These carrots, which you see, I came out and I spaced them out. I thinned them out because I wanted to get some good sized carrots. So it doesn't look like I have a lot right now, but as they grow, they'll fill in. But they take so long to germinate. There are times when you will plant carrots and it will take 2 weeks, 3 weeks for them to germinate. And then I've had them germinate in as fast as 2 days before. And one of the things that's very confusing is, if you plant a carrot, say when you plant seeds, you don't want to plant it any more than twice the depth of the seed, the size of the seed. And if you've got a seed that's like, super small, you think you want to plant them like right on the surface and barely cover them up. But I've gotten to where I go a lot deeper and I completely gently saturate this ground, and I get really good germination with them. And that's why we've got carrots in this bed, we've got carrots here, and we've got a row of carrots over there. You got to know that they don't like to be really hot when they germinate. So you want to definitely try and get them as the temperatures are cooling or before they warm up. But another thing is just like with the spinach, you've got to plant these things at the right time. You can't just wake up in July and be like, you know what, I think I'm gonna plant carrots today. Because depending on your area, it just may not work. So we want to really make sure that we're getting them in at the right time, and you just be very patient with them. I used to cover my soil. I've tried cardboard to keep it nice and moist. I've done blocks of wood and they do fine. But what I really came to do is I would come out in the morning and I just keep a hose by and I'll water the top to keep it nice and wet. And then I'll come back by the next day and I'll just keep watering until they start to kind of come back and you start to see them pop up. And then I'll cut back. But that's really been the best way. And depending on what you grow, I mean, if you want to do a whole bed, that's actually easier than just doing like a piece here and a piece there, because a whole bed, you can just come out and just water the whole thing. So make sure you're doing that. And this is really the same story for parsnips. So parsnips is another one. It's really hard to germinate. Takes an incredible amount of time. I mean, no less than 21 days for parsnips to germinate as a whole. And the trick is, just like with carrots, is you just gotta keep them moist. You've got to keep the water going to them until they come up. And then once they come up, they get better. In this bed, we did rows going all the way down this drip line right here. So in each side, there's parsnips coming up. And you can see that we do have parsnips coming up. But these parsnips, this isn't a parsnip, were planted like almost 2.5 months ago, and that's how big they are. To put it plainly, they are just slow to grow. And we had some parsnips last year that were a year old, and we went to go plant them, and they did not germinate at all. And we did the same thing this year. We had some leftover parsnip seeds, and then I came back, I got some more seeds, put them in. 20 days later, those came out and actually planted them in different spots. So I knew where the old seed was in the new seed, and it was totally different. They came right up. So you don't want to save your parsnip seeds. And what I would recommend, even if you don't want to do like a whole bed, just sow them really heavy, because with the amount of time that it takes for them to germinate, you've got to go through and you've got to keep them moist. And some of them might dry out, some of them might not. But that way you can thin. I'd rather thin than after a 21-day germination period and then have to come back. You're going to miss the boat, and you're going to miss it hard and be stuck. So that's another thing that you can keep in mind. Just sow them heavy, use up those seeds the first year, and then water them good. Another one is really easy to grow, and it's pretty easy to start by seed, but there is something that you can kind of, I don't know, it can make it more difficult if you're not careful, and that would be lettuce. And I know people that grow lettuce are like, oh, how dare you, but just hear me out. The thing is once you plant your lettuce seed, and if you're having a rainy season or you're watering too much or anything like that, that lettuce is so fragile that it may actually start to rot. And then you're just rotting away your seeds. I've had that happen a few times. And so the biggest thing with lettuce is just like, be careful with it. Don't overwater it, and don't obviously underwater it. And you have to think, these seeds are very delicate and they're just going below the surface. You just got to keep the surface wet. And a lot of times all it is, I take a hose and just wave it over it a couple times. You don't have to like saturate it down inches, because every day what you have to remember, when the sun comes out, that top inch or so of soil, let's say an inch, is going to dry out a lot faster than what's 3, 4, 5 inches down. That'll actually retain the water better. And I know that mulching is a good thing to do, and it's an amazing thing to do actually. But when you're seeding and direct seeding, hold off on the mulch, because one, it's very hard to control where you put it, and it can actually block the seeds from coming up. Even though it will help retain the moisture, it can make it a little bit more difficult. So what I do is I will come back, and once the plants are up and running and they look like they're gonna make it for a while, then I will go through and mulch the beds out and, you know, get all the correct cover in and everything like that. Because then I can put the mulch around the plants okay, and it's not going to hurt anything. It's just going to boost it all up. And you could even come back and do piece by piece, but mulch is a big thing that even as good as it is, it can hinder your growth, especially if you're doing a, you know, direct seeding or something like that. Now, that's why I like to do a lot of transplants. Anything that I can transplant that makes it easier, I will do, just because I can put that in and then basically I can come right back and mulch immediately. So these are the hardest crops in the fall that I have to grow from seed. There are other ones that I do in the spring, but we'll talk about those when they get closer. But just with a little bit of temperature awareness, watering awareness, and patience, you can handle it and you can get them all. It just takes time. And that's why I harp all the time, pay attention to your weather. Know your histories. As long as you've been there, you should have an idea of what's going on if you're a gardener or a homesteader. And then just keep track of it, look ahead, plan ahead, and then move on.